Alright guys, so now I'm going to be introducing you into some perspective. Alright, cool. So I'm just going to be working off of two of the examples that I've drawn out here. I've kind of just cleaned them up a bit just for this demonstration. Okay, so between the two of them, which of the two can you guess has more perspective? Yes, the first one has more perspective. And how do I know that? Basically, I'm seeing a lot of eye level happening here at every single level, basically. Alright, okay, these lines aren't supposed to be here. Anyway, whereas this one, okay, so if this had to be like, it's the ground that it's on, this one is more, has more of a perspective like that, basically. So in that sense, you're going to be getting far more of an idea of the different perspectives that are at play with judging your angles of the different parts of the figure over here. So for example, if you have the upper torso over here, okay, so basically I judge my perspective from the basics of just working out the angles of the lower and upper torso. So in this case, since the upper torso in this one is more sort of inwards like that, the first line that I normally add, just generally in my sketches, would be a line in this area over here. So for this one, because it's sort of more facing us, it is inwards like that, the line would be kind of there. It would be more or less horizontal. Alright. The second line I add is basically along the panty line. So it is like that. So in that sense, you can already tell that this is angled more downwards and inwards like that. So if I just had to do a quick demonstration on perspective, you basically have this as a pillar, a very thick pillar that you are looking directly at. So this is your point of view, your what is it? Your horizontal. What is it called? Your eye line. Yeah, your eye line. And then from there, everything below your eye line, you know you're going to be looking down on. So basically, you gradually start to get more of the sort of rounded nature of the discs coming through, versus the opposite being true. When you look up, you're going to be seeing more of what is, you'll be looking more, man, how do I explain this? Yeah, down onto and up at. So it's a very gradual, so it needs to be. Sorry guys, I'm just having a bit of a hard time working at this angle right now. So yeah, that kind of thing. And so since that is the case, we're now going to be applying the same kind of understanding when it comes to the form. So we're judging that this area over here is our eye line, and below that you work. Okay, so you're working with your eye line, and then you're working with the angles. So since this goes in, we know that we're going to be looking down at this more so, especially because the lower torso is angled more downwards like that. All right, so with the shoulders are pretty much going to be straight like that, and then pretty much judging the same sort of perspective lines like that on this one. Since we know that this angle is pushing outwards like that, this line over here, which, I mean, I pretty much call, I refer to these sort of lines here that I'm adding now, I have added there, as the, I don't know, like, I guess you can call it the I don't know, small shirt line? I don't know, just this line over there. Or the, yeah, I don't know, what would you call it? The bra line? I don't know, I can't think of it. You call it whatever you want to. That is pretty much going to be in that angle, so you know that because of this angle being pushed out like that, you're looking more up at this part of the body, because if I have it to draw it from the side, it's going to be more outwards like that. Lower torso. So yeah, you know it's more outwards like that. Okay, and then obviously the panty line over here is pretty much the same as right there. So yeah, that's my absolute starting point when it comes to judging the angles of the torso from there. And then from there, I pretty much work out the rest accordingly. And I, you know, with what I mean by the rest, I pretty much just kind of judge it from my own sort of feeling. I don't necessarily do it like this, how I'm going to, but it's a very good practice just to get a better sense of the angles that you're working with whatever perspective. Okay, so because this is our eye level at that point, yeah, this sort of being the eye level here, we know that whatever is below it over here is going to be more at this angle. Okay, so in that case, actually, let me copy and paste this. Okay, because now, okay, so this leg, because it is, you want to, okay, so this is more to the side, but because of the shape of the leg itself, okay, this is a good starting line over here to have. So basically, you know that it's going to have this kind of shape to it. And since this leg is falling more now behind, because this knee is coming a little bit more forwards, actually, yeah, so that was the thing. This knee is slightly coming more forward, so since that is the case, you're going to have a little bit more of an angle up there, like that, and then it changes the opposite direction now. Pretty much like that, and then it changes once again around the foot like that. Okay, with this line over here, let's work. Okay, we know that since behind over there and not coming towards us like that, we know that we're going to be looking down onto it more like that. And then the stomach over here, since this is our line, we know that we can gradually work with the angles like that. And again, although it's kind of work over the boobs now. Because yeah, this part of the body is separate to the arms, which kind of needs its own. Okay, let me just try a little bit more accurately. Okay, now for the arms are going to be, yeah, you're looking up at, over here, up at, if you judge from these over here, and then by the time it gets over here, it's going to be straight there, and then it starts to, yeah, go in that direction, well, from the perspective. This arm, pretty much judging it down all the way like that. And then this foot also looking down onto. Okay, so that's pretty much the idea of how this is all coming together now in terms of just understanding your planes, your surfaces, and the structure of, yeah, just your surfaces in general. Alright, so moving on to this one over here, it's just about the same thing, but you're working with, only difference here is that you're working with more of this angle, which has to transition a little bit more. There we go. Okay, and then for this line, the lines down here, yeah, since our line is over here, it's going to be more or less straight over here, and then it's going to be dropping like that. And then it's going to be dropping. It's going to be like here. Or, yeah, we're going to be starting straight. And then we're going to be carrying it outwards. Like that. Okay, straightening out already and slightly dropping like that. And straight, and then yeah, this is quite a lot of the lines here will be more or less straight, so you're not really dealing with a lot of perspective angles here too much. So in this case, can actually yeah, be rounded one this way, and then it straightens out. Okay, so yeah, that is the first way that is very good in terms of trying to get a feel for the actual shapes and forms and perspective lines of the figures that you are working with. Another way of actually studying these okay, I'm going to bring it back down. Is by breaking these structures down into cylinders, and yeah, basically cylinders for the limbs, and okay, well, yeah, you'll see what I mean. Okay, basically for the upper and lower torso, I pretty much break it down like this. Okay, so we have the torso, which we can't actually see the underside over here. You can at least see inside on this side. And then for the lower torso. Okay guys, so because it has been a while since I have broken down the figure in this way, you will notice that from time to time I do quietly mumble to myself, and a lot of times in a way where you can't really hear what I'm saying. But don't worry, I'm not really saying anything of huge importance. That's just pretty much how I personally go through the process of just trying to remember and just refigure things out in a way where I'm personally clear about what I am doing, because I want to make sure that I'm sharing the best of what I can. Okay, so you can now see more of the underside of the upper torso. So yeah, you'll see that when I do actually share stuff with you, I'm just trying to explain how my mind is working and my perspectives in terms of the choices that I'm making, so that it's very clear that you are either seeing things from a perspective of you looking directly up at certain things, or down onto things, or directly at, and just variations of that. But yeah, so please don't mind my quiet mumbling like that. It's not exactly directed at you guys, and you're really not missing out on anything at all. If there is anything that I have missed out, I will make sure to include that for you guys, because I definitely don't want you guys to miss out on anything like that at all. Because once again, I want to make sure that you get the very best of what I can offer. Okay, cool. So I've pretty much broken up the upper and lower torso without the midsection. Yeah, we're not going to really pay that much attention to that right now, because the most important part is just breaking down the biggest structures, the ones that move, in relation to everything else. Okay, so that is the first starting point. So yeah, you can really see you looking down into the lower torso, and okay, in this case, yeah, you're looking up at, and you're looking kind of directly at because of the angle of her more facing inwards like that. Okay, then for the legs, I just turn these into cylinders, so I have them all separate to everything else, but they're cylinders with shape. So in this case, I'm going to break them down more simplistically in relation to the flow. So in this case, because we know that before that the secondary flow, that it comes more outwards in like that, this is the flow that I'm going to be working on based on how I'm going to be breaking down this upper leg over here. So it's still based on the actual shapes, but more based on the flow itself. Okay, you're going to be seeing inside here of the leg. And the flow of this is this way. So we're not going to worry about this line over here, because this is what we are after. Okay. Then for the knees, in this case, could add a ball. Should we do that? I think we'll do that afterwards. Leave space for it now, because I want to show you everything more in cylindrical form. Okay, once again, you're doing the shapes in relation to cylinders, in relation to the flow, not the anatomy. Oh, and then guys, I will have some more examples of breaking the figure down in this way at the end of this video, and in time-lapse as well. So in this case, because we're not going to be doing it like this on this side, because now we're not working with this leg from the front, we're working it from the side, and from the side, the lower leg curves more inwards like that. Okay, now for the arms. And I leave this entire area open for now, because this is generally where I add, if you want to add the ball, we'll do that afterwards. So the flow goes. You can make it straight, so you can make it inwards like this. Once again, it depends on the angle that you're looking at. If it's directly from the front, then I would do it a straight line. But since it's not exactly from the front, you're going to be doing it this way and that way. Okay, since this arm is moving upwards, we're not going to see into the side over there. It's more coming towards us because of the perspective. We're going to be more seeing the front open here. Okay, this angle goes this way. Okay, and the neck, pretty much a cylinder. As you can see, I've pretty much cut it into the top over here like that. And then the head, that's pretty much the same as what I had before. Alright, so that pretty much gives you a general idea for, okay, well actually, hand's not so important because that's not really that much of the focus, but I'm pretty much just going to add more of what I had there. Alright, and then in terms of okay, you can add the center line. Let's add the center line like that, and then we can add the knee joints and the shoulder joints. And then let's add the joint between the upper and lower torso. Just to give it something to rotate on, in the sense of it being able to move or tilt. And then, I might as well add a ball on that side. Alright, so the more you understand in these kinds of shapes, the better your understanding of just the 3D form will be. And I'll do another example now quickly of the other one. Just to show you, because I have a whole bunch of the flow lines which are pretty much deciding the flow lines of how I'm creating these cylinders and these structures. Okay. Okay, so in this for this one, let's actually already start adding the balls instead of doing it afterwards. As you can see, do it this way. Oh yes, and then the joints over here as well. Alright. Lower arms. Inwards like that. Out. Joint. Out. And in this case, out and hold. Oh yes, okay, cool. So basically, only reason we're doing it this way is because of the angle of the bicep and how that works from this angle. Whereas the angle of this is still going to be curving in. It's not going to be. What is it? Interesting. Okay, cool. Yes. So yeah, just since I'm paying a little bit more attention to these counter angles in terms of counter curves, I think I'm almost wanting to do it this way. Yes. Because then the hand then goes like that. Alright, cool. Yes, I'm happy with that. Okay. Now for the legs, let's see. As a matter of fact, it would be more like this. Yes, let's go with that. Now this is not anatomically accurate, but it just gives you a better understanding of the flow and the forms and the 3D forms of the form that you are working with. Okay, because yeah, it's this way, and now it's going to be again this way, just because of the angles of the anatomy that we're working with now. So yeah, it can be a bit tricky to work out at first, because you've got to really keep in mind the angle of the actual parts of the anatomy that you're working with as well. It's not just about it's not just about adding, this to everything that is below, and because if this is coming towards you from this lower angle, it could also be like that as well. So yeah, you really got to start developing a better sense of these 3D forms, so that those judgments can really work in your favor a lot more. Okay, so down. Alright. Okay, so since this is the other way this side, let's have some evidence of the ball joint there, and that way like that. Another neck. And you're going to get a bit of evidence of it cutting into the upper torso like that. Just to get some kind of perspective lines happening on the face like that. And that's a pretty cool robot. You can actually add the centerline like that. And yeah, that is pretty cool. So yeah, this is a very good way to start getting a better understanding of, once again, well actually yeah, in this case, flow and the 3D forms that are happening. So yeah, I'll definitely be giving you some exercises in terms of this at the end of this video. Okay, so that pretty much gives us a good basis for how we're going to be going about this section with understanding the form and then angling those forms in a way where you can really start to add a real sense of 3D, sort of 3D shapes to the structures that you're working with, and also foreshortening and really taking advantage of all of that. I'm going to giving you a bunch of exercises which will include what I've just demonstrated for you. But for now, before we get there, I just want to show you a few more examples of working with these kinds of contour lines that I have over here on the left, and taking it even further with some of the more complex and involved poses, which involve foreshortening and just a lot of angles that you need to be more mindful of. So that's coming up in a moment. Alright, cool guys, so now we're going to be working with some photo references at last. Alright, cool, so what I'm going to be doing now, I'm just going to be sketching this out. I'm going to be going through a bit of a time lapse with that, and then I'll catch you guys at the end of that when I then start adding those inner sort of contour lines, just to show more of a greater sense of the form that we're working with. Okay, cool. So since we've gotten that in now, I'm now going to be at the point where I'm going to be adding in those inner contour lines. I don't know if they're exactly called that, but I'm going to be calling them that because that's what makes sense to me, at least. All right, cool. So, okay, so now this is all very much about awareness, because the practice of doing these exercises where you're adding in these sort of inner contour lines like this is just a practice to develop a sort of greater sense of the surface forms that you're going to be working with. So yeah, awareness is key here when doing these studies. So since I'm working off of the reference over here, I need to judge how I'm going to be going about the different planes when I'm going to be now adding them in. So to start off with, you can start off anywhere you want to, really. I'm going to start off with the upper torso. So yeah, I'm going to start at the arm. And the first thing you need to identify when, since now you're working with perspective, is where is your eye level at, because that pretty much decides everything from there. And already just from looking at the photo, there are a couple giveaways. The most obvious one being. Now, eye level is just the most where things are the most horizontal. So in this case, the horizontal, well, the eye line level is sitting right here. So this is the level where the camera is shot the photo. So everything from there is gonna, be like that, and below it is gonna be in the opposite direction. But it's very dependent now. That just being the basis, we still need to keep in mind the actual angles of the forms in itself, because things can change quite considerably with that being the case. So let's start. Okay, now with the arm, the first thing that I'm seeing is that the arm is already at a slight perspective over here, it not being completely straight down and facing us, it being at a slight angle, very slight angle coming outwards like that. Because if you had to look from above, you would see that this part is further out compared to where the shoulder is. So since that's the case, there's going to be a very slight sort of angle happening there. So that is the first area that we can already start adding a bit of that, like that. All right, now with the lower arm over here, pretty much the same thing, where it is not 100% facing us, pretty much dead on like that. So because that is the case, this is further out compared to where the rest of the arm is over here. So since that's the case, okay, now you've got to also judge, okay, there's the eye level and then the vertical line as well from where the camera is taken from within that axis. So I would say that axis is more or less running along here-ish, this sort of area here. Okay, so since that is the case, we know that this area, again, is also going to be slightly outwards like that. So that's how we're going to be adding it here now as well. And it obviously curves more the further it goes that way, because it's moving further away from the center vertical line. Well, okay, now for the legs. Okay, so first of all, one of the giveaways here is the shorts, which is already showing a bit of a curve like that. So that is telling me that this will eventually hit some kind of a straighter line around about, where would I even say? Possibly about this. But you've got to kind of feel this and judge this for yourself. And obviously the more you do these exercises, the better you'll become at judging the sort of surfaces and angles that you're working with. So, since the shorts give us a very good idea. Okay, you don't have to add it at this angle, because it'll be more at an angle like that. So, how the shorts are pulling are just being pulled in that direction. Alright, so that is pretty much our first line that we're working with. And now we are working with the lower leg now. I can already tell, even though it almost appears as though it is facing us directly, as though it is straight up, there is also a bit of perspective here as well, because, okay, so first of all, you can tell that our knees are together, that they are resting together, because of where the okay, so you have the toes that are touching over here more or less, but then as a result you can see that the heels are further apart, and as a result the knees will be touching like that, so the lower leg will be at a bit of an angle like that. So since that is the case, from this lower angle now, since this is below, you can see it already has, there is a slight perspective that you can see here already from the shoe. So since that is the case, there is a slight amount that straightens out over here, and then it will start to turn in the opposite direction around that point. And I'm not really focusing on adding any of the clothing right now. I'm just paying attention to adding in the general forms that are here as your basis before you even worry about clothes whatsoever. Okay, these lines straighten out, and then start turning in the opposite direction. But yeah, it's very subtle at this sort of point. But yeah, also as well, actually, yeah, I can do that again. Also as well, I'm being very particular right now. I don't think it's always necessary to be this particular about it, about trying to work out the exact science to what the angle might be. The most important part is just to get started and start getting a feel for it. And then from there, you'll really start to become more instinctive about this, instead of trying to give your attention so much to this. But in the beginning, you kind of need to give more of your attention than usual, so eventually it'll catch on. All right, so the angle of the shoes, in this area, the laces kind of give it away, these angles over here, so you can see that's already at a curve like that. Laces also. So there's the first area we are going to be starting to add it. And then the other side, obviously, you can see it's more in the other direction, since the toes are facing each other. Alright, so for the upper torso, I'm not really going to be paying attention to the definitions of the breasts. I'm just going in with straight lines, pretty much. And you can see from the angle, it's already more of a sort of looking up at sort of angle, with the lines being more angled downwards like this. And then again, probably not as much there, because yeah, I would straighten out probably about there. Okay, cool. And yeah, I'm happy with that. Then for the furthest arm over here, now the upper arm, you can see already there's a giveaway over here. Oh, yeah, let me just get this line out of the way. There's a giveaway with the shirts over here that is already a more or less indication. Can't always go by that 100% because of how material can pull, whatever, but you're already seeing the roundness over there, so that is enough for me to know that you're looking it in a way where it is, the perspective is more in that sort of direction if I had to, draw it up in a cylindrical sort of form. Okay, so angle is more like that. Now for the upper arm, I would say, just kind of guessing that there's a slight perspective on that. Also kind of given away by her little bracelets over here. So yeah, there are these little clues here and there when it comes to studying from references. So yeah, and then the head, we're not going to be adding any specific details there, but yeah, that's pretty much the planes of the head, looking at it from this sort of angle. Alright, so that pretty much concludes the first one. Should we add any neck? Yeah, okay. Not much. Yeah, I can't really judge too much perspective from this angle, but yeah, so with it being such a minor feature right now, you can't even make it out in the photo. Kind of just got to judge it for yourself and just add it in accordingly, like that. Okay, so that is our first example. Now I'm going to be moving on to the next one. Alright, so this one's a little bit more complex, and yeah, I can't say I am the greatest fan of setting gestures, just because I haven't really studied them that much, because I haven't really used them that much in my artwork. So yeah, it is a bit of a weakness for me. So yeah, I'm glad I'm actually doing a little bit of these studies right now for you guys. Okay, so once again, I'm just going to be sketching this out in the same way that I did the previous demo, and then I'll get you again once I'm ready to be adding in those inner contour lines. Okay, cool. So I'm happy enough to work with that now. Okay, cool. So getting started, I need to now identify my eye level. So, now I don't have anything definite to exactly work off of, so I'm just going to take a guess because of the perspective that's kind of happening in this area already. So we are quite low, so I'm guessing the eye level is about here, more or less. And yeah, we're quite centered on this, so yeah, this is pretty much the level that we're seeing it from. Okay, so starting off, I'm already going to be just trying to find whatever clues that I can. So now working with the legs first off, with the legs coming towards us, especially the upper leg coming quite towards us, and then the lower leg falling backwards like it is. So already, because there is quite a curve over here like this, that already gives us an indication of how curved it's going to be when working with getting a feel for the upper legs and how it comes around and meets the knee over here, which is facing us directly. So yeah, we pretty much already know that from this outer line, that is pretty much the starting point for these lines are coming out. And they'll be more condensed and they'll space themselves outwards more as they come towards us like this. Okay, cool. So we have the knee here. And then from this point outwards, you can pretty much see that, okay, yeah, there is a little bit of a hint over here, but by that point, you know, the angles over here look quite different. Well, not quite, a little bit more different compared to the angles over here. But already you can see that this is pretty much the nature of the angle of the lower leg and how it falls away from us. And then with the center point being knee. Okay, it's pretty much the same with the curve of the leg over here. You can really tell that the line is going to be quite like that already. sense of the knee. And then, yeah, pretty much falling out in a way like this already. Alright, cool. So yeah, you can really see that just by adding those lines, it's given a lot more depth to this, to make it a lot more easy for us to see how this is coming towards us and how this is falling away like that. Or vice versa. You know, but yeah, you get that sense of that, those sort of angles working. Alright, so now for the upper body. Okay, so to pretty much judge the angle of the upper torso, I've pretty much just got to get a feel for the entire torso in itself, upper and lower, and I can kind of tell that even though it is quite facing us, this shoulder is a little bit closer to us than this one. So, okay, so it's definitely we're definitely not looking up at it in this sort of fashion. It's kind of, I would say it's more or less neutral, especially with how she's almost in a way leaning over, because this one is a little bit more over this one. So in that sense, it's more, yeah, it's a little bit more straight and into itself a little bit. But yeah, it's quite neutral, so yeah, at least understanding that, we know what not to do. So yeah, I'm pretty much have it kind of straight on over here. It's a little bit of a tricky one. But yeah, I'm gonna have it slightly coming in this angle over here, but being more straight around the waist. Okay. So yeah, when you're pretty much on the fence like that in terms of, is it more, you know, are we looking more up at versus down onto, you can pretty much choose, you know, how much you want to kind of meet those two in between, neutralizing that. And yeah, it's pretty much up to you when it's so close like that. Okay, so now for the lower arm. Okay, so basically, since we judged that this was our eye level more or less, and that this arm is fairly straight, I would say that this area is more flat, more dead on, and then it slightly falls away like that. And same with the upper here, because it's almost totally vertical. Maybe there's a bit of an angle happening, so I would say flat there, and then it gradually has more perspective on the way up like that. And then with this arm, I would say it's pretty straight. Draw my arm a little bit thinner than the reference. That's okay. So it's quite flat, actually. If anything, there might be a little perspective at the top over here. And on the way down, gradually, you'll start to see some perspective happening there. And then yeah, at this angle, I'm not really too focused on adding this to the fingers as much. So yeah, we can end it there for as far as we want to go with this. In terms of the neck, okay, so that's definitely more of a down angle where it's coming out. Oh, and then guys, I see now that the giveaway that we're actually looking down onto the upper torso was actually given away with us being able to look down onto her neck, shoulder area like that. So yeah, my guess was correct. Okay, yeah, and then I pretty much just kind of guessed the angle of the head being downwards, like that. I wouldn't even say there's any sort of perspective of seeing any of the other side of the face. I would just think it's, a straightforward profile. Alright, so... Okay, cool. That is pretty much it for that one, with how I've worked out the surfaces there. And now for the final one. Alright, cool. So once again, I'm going to just sketch this out and time-lapse it, and I'll get you when I start to add the inner contour lines. Okay, cool. I'm pretty happy with working with this one now. Okay, so with this one, yeah, there's some cool perspective happening here with how the upper body is angling away and we're looking up at it like this. So first of all is determining our eye level. So right now, I would say it's, yeah, within this sort of area over here. Yeah, obviously not this, because we're looking up at this table over here like that. So yeah, it's definitely along this sort of area. Kind of maybe judging it from there, but yeah. Cool. So there are two dead giveaways. Even though we know that we're looking up at the figure with the perspective like this, the two dead giveaways is what she is wearing. Already you can see that there's a bit of a line happening like that, and quite a nice angle over there in the upper torso like that. So we can pretty much know how to pretty much transition from the lower torso to the upper torso. Actually, a little better. Yeah, so pretty much like that. What I can do here. Yeah, it's not the easiest trying to wing it with these intuitions when you can't actually judge how your stroke is going to be appearing on the screen, but I'm doing my best, you know. Okay, so that's all right. Yeah, that's not too bad. And then from there, the arms. Now, it's pretty easy to see that, you know, from here to this point over here, it's moving away from us like that. So you can really tell the perspective is going to be moving like this now. With the other arm, it is also the same story. Alright, and then with the legs, actually you can add there, like that. Alright, cool. So for the legs now. Okay, so for the first point, we already know that the legs are angled more towards us, where the knees are closer, because seeing the other side over here like that already tells us that that side is more turning towards us like that. So in that way, the angles of the legs, as you can see right now, is moving away from us like that. And then, you know, also sometimes I just, to try judge these angles like this, I also just kind of imagine them if they had to be wearing something like stockings or, you know, high socks or anything like that. And yeah, that already, just visualizing that will give me a bit of a better feel for these sort of angles that I'm working with. Okay, so there's the lower legs over here. I would say about sort of straight there, but then I would say there's more perspective in this sort of region. Or the straightest, but there would be yeah, because of the angle and also it facing us more at an angle like that instead of dead straight, there would be a bit of that angle coming through of that perspective there. And then yeah, I'm pretty much just working off that line over there, and that being my sort of indication of how to go about the lines on the other side. And then, yeah, I'm just adding a circle there for the knee, just to show that that is the point that yeah, that is the central point, basically. Okay, cool. So yeah, that is pretty much that in terms of the ones that I wanted to show you so far. Alright guys, so now I want to give you some exercises. Also wait until the end of the exercise section, because I will be giving you some more demonstrations of the figures broken down into that cylindrical sort of, yeah, shapes and forms, just to get an even better idea about what I'm talking about. Alright, cool, so let's get to those exercises now. Alright, now for the exercises. I would like you to once again draw 30 sketches broken up into 15 each. The first 15 will be of these sketches that I just demonstrated for you. And I've also included some references that I was lucky enough to get permission to use for in this tutorial. Yeah, I've just supplied you guys with a whole bunch that you can choose from. You guys are totally welcome to, you know, choose your own wherever you want. But yeah, I just thought I'd include some of these just to make it that much easier for you to just start off right away. Okay, so after getting to 15 of these, I then want you guys to do 15 of the examples that I did from you in earlier when it comes to breaking down the forms in a more cylindrical way. Now I will be giving you some more exercises right after this, well not exercises, some demonstrations, just to give you a better idea about how to break up the form from different angles. So yeah, just pay attention to that after the section on exercises. But yeah, I'm wanting you to do another 15 of those. Also, once again, working those off of just taking whatever examples that you feel you want to work with, whether it's the references that I provided you with or whatever of your own. So yeah, that is pretty much it from the exercises from this part of the tutorial. Alright guys, so I'm just going to be getting to these 3 gestures for you quickly, just to better explain the flowing states broken down into these cylinder shapes, just so that you can get a far better awareness of how flow runs through each part of the body, and how you can almost predict what the next sort of curve or nature of the flow will be. So basically what I mean in terms of flow, flow pretty much runs in a sort of motion like this, like a wave form. And the same is true with how flow runs throughout the entire anatomy of the human figure. So basically, if you have a part of the body that is moving in this direction, you know that the movement of flow in the next part of the body will be in the opposite direction. So yeah, even though like in real life, it won't be as obvious as that. So when you do your own practical work, I wouldn't suggest keeping to this 100% strictly like this. So this whole practice that I'm showing you now is just about developing your awareness with how flow runs through the body and gestures in an exaggerated way now, just so that you can see it in a far better way. And practicing this will loosen up your idea of how you get flow to run through your gestures in general. So yeah, this is another important part of just taking flow that much further. All right, so as much as this is also going to give you an awareness of the sort of more 3D shapes of your form, yes, flow is definitely very much involved in this. Okay, cool. So starting off with the first one, I start off with the upper torso. Torso. And then moving to the legs area, now I have to identify the nature of the flow here. So in this case, it is flowing in this direction. So same flow this way, same flow this way. The joint, and then since it's flowing in this direction, now the opposite is true for this side. As you can see, I'm taking the entire form and I'm flowing the entire form, both sides, going in this direction. When it comes to curves meeting up like this, it's fine to do it in this fashion. I mean, yeah, you can break it up like this as well and add like a ball there as well, like a point of axis. But, you know, that's up to you if you want to take it there. For now, I'm just keeping it to this. Okay, so we have a curve in this direction and the opposite direction. Now, the opposite direction continues through the foot in this way. And okay, so it's best to break down the flow of the foot in two sections. You have the main part flowing in this direction, and then the opposite part which flows in the other direction for the toes. And even though that is not necessarily the case of how it looks like in the reference, for the practice of this exercise, it is best just to go with the idea of how this is how it is running through here like this. Once again, just to develop an awareness of this flowing nature throughout the body. Okay, so it goes in this direction, and the same goes in the opposite direction. Lower leg, and then opposite direction again for the feet, or for the main parts. And then the toes in this direction as well. And for the arms, yes, this direction. And then the opposite direction for that. And then even breaking down the hands, the same is true. So basically, this direction then becomes the opposite direction, then becomes the opposite direction, like that as well. The arm side, and then the opposite direction for the side. Okay, it's hard to tell with the hands and what they're doing right now like that. So we're just going to keep like that for now. Adding a bit of a cutaway into the It's also for the neck like that. And then yes, could have added this earlier, but I'm really not sure right now. Alright, cool, so that is the first one. So you're getting pretty much the idea in terms of how the flow is working through all these different counter curves like that throughout the body. Alright, cool, so moving on to the next one now. So we have so the first one we've done from the rear view like this. But you'll see, getting these principles down first will just give you such a good foundation to be able to know how to tackle studies from other angles like this. Okay, so we've seen it from the bottom, center line. Okay, we can't necessarily see the head, but yeah, pretty much. Just kind of guessing it in there, like that. Okay, so moving down now. Okay, we're not going to be seeing the inside of the torso because now we're going the opposite direction where as you would see the inside of the torso from this side, well, not from this side. Okay, now breaking down and you want to have each part separate. So there's a break over here where the leg does this. And then let's keep on with this side. Okay, so it's going to be in this direction. You can see all these opposing curves that are happening here like this. Okay, here's a good example of the curve that happened to the feet now from this side. So you have an angle like this coming through here, like this, and then it curved in the opposite direction quite clearly from the reference. And then the toes curve out like that. So this is a very good example of that. Okay, then with arms, it's going to look a bit funny now because I know the arms are suggesting that it's going this way, but let's keep on going with the whole sort of format of just keeping it to all these counter curves like this. So that would mean it could be like this. Alright, cool, so we've got to go in the opposite direction now, like that. Okay, for this side, yes, the cylinder will be going in this direction now. And then the opposite direction like that. Wait, okay. Oh yes, and then the ball we can add over here for the center access point. Alright, and then for the last one. Cool, okay, so let's start off with the torso. Okay, now we can start with the leg. And yeah, clearly this is a good example of these counter curves happening here. So I'm going to have this first one going this direction. It's pretty clear that one is in the opposite direction now. And then, yeah, another good example of the feet and the counter curves in the feet. Broken down into two spots, like that. Yeah, you wouldn't really see it from this side, so. So yeah, you can definitely see that there is a sort of system happening here in terms of the flow. It's not always obvious with some angles, but yeah, with certain ones they are very clear. So yeah, sometimes in a case like this, where there's quite a separation from the lower and upper torso, you can pretty much have it as though, you know, there's a sort of some sort of kind of energy force that is keeping these things together, kind of like Rayman. So yeah, you don't have to have everything like making contact. Okay. Okay, so this, even though the angle of the arm is suggesting that it's going in this direction, we got to keep up with the whole system of the flow and have it go in this direction. Because we are keeping up with this motion here like that. Okay, it's very hard to tell from the hand right now in terms of the sort of flow happening, but you can already see from this goes to this. And now for the last arm over here, which we're pretty much gonna have moving in this direction. Because the hand now is in the opposite, from this to that. Cool, let's pull down. Alright guys, so yeah, you pretty much get the whole sort of system behind the flow that I'm trying to explain to you guys here, even though you won't necessarily draw this in a way where you're trying to do anything realistic or even close to that at all. Just the idea of these flow lines running through like this will make a big difference in your awareness and how you approach gesture in general. Because as you can see, even though I have some of these angles quite different to how they appear in their real life reference, they still actually all work together. There's still a natural quality coming through here. So yeah, this is a very good level of awareness to be of flow. Alright guys, so that's pretty much a wrap for this part on perspective. Alright guys, well I hope that makes it more clear about the cylindrical flow-like state throughout these forms. So yeah, this is quite a fun section, so I hope you enjoy your exercises.